And you're seeing there on your screen our first Earth views. This view of Earth captured from a human-rated spacecraft not seen since 1972 during the final Apollo mission some 50 years ago. The views of our blue marble in the blackness of space now capturing the imagination of a new generation, the Artemis generation. At 6:44 a.m. Central, just about 9 minutes and 30 seconds ago, commands were sent for the outbound powered flyby burn to occur with the Orbital Maneuvering System engine, or OMS engine, on board Orion, which sends Orion close enough to the lunar surface to leverage the moon's gravitational force and swing the spacecraft once around the moon toward entry into distant retrograde orbit. Following this, Orion will remain in the distant retrograde orbit for 1/2 elliptical orbit around the moon, which will last about 6 days.
Now to distant retrograde orbit, or DRO. We're going to be about 38,000 miles away from the lunar surface as we orbit around. That's part of why we're calling it distant. And we call it retrograde because the moon orbiting the Earth in this direction, and then we're entering into our orbit in this direction. Opposites, retrograde. Now we're choosing this orbit because it's extremely stable. It doesn't cost a lot of fuel to maintain your position there, and that gives all of our engineers, our flight controllers, the chance to really learn about Orion systems in deep space, learn about flying a spacecraft farther than we've ever sent one intended for humans. We're going beyond anywhere we ever went for Apollo. And so we're in that orbit, test out all of those systems. Eventually we'll do a maneuver to break out of that, do another flyby, and come home.
We're continuing to get some spectacular views from the Orion spacecraft. From this view, Orion is 1,277 miles above the lunar surface following its return-powered flyby burn, which sent it around the backside of the moon. Orion now has its sights set on home. This view is from one of the solar array wing or SAW cameras on board the vehicle. The vehicle now over 1,680 miles away from the moon. And that small sliver towards the bottom of your screen, that's here, that's home, that's us. And that is where Orion is headed next.
"50 years ago today, Apollo 17 Commander Gene Cernan and Lunar Module pilot Jack Schmitt guided Challenger to a pinpoint landing on a barren rock-strewn area of the moon called Taurus Littrow. A half-century later, NASA's newest moon explorer, the Orion spacecraft, is barreling its way back home after circumnavigating the moon and beyond in an elliptical distant retrograde orbit, now less than 2 hours away from splashing down in the Pacific Ocean west of Baja California to complete its shakedown mission that has opened a new era of deep space exploration." Thank you, Philip. And again, a live view of Orion closing in on planet Earth, now about 11,000 miles away from Earth, as it continues a very, very precise trajectory for a splashdown that is scheduled at 11:39 and 42 seconds a.m. Central Time this morning. Now just 1 minute away from crew module, service module separation. We'll be standing by for confirmation of that from the 10 seconds until SEP. We have confirmation of separation. Orion flying on its own. Again, the separation occurred right on time at 11 a.m. and 11 seconds Central Time, with Orion 3,200 statute miles away from Earth. The European service module has done its job. Just 1 minute away from entry interface. And this view from the cabin camera looking out of the upper hatch of Orion. You can see the limb of the Earth. We're going to be losing all of the data here shortly once we enter into the Earth's atmosphere and begin the first of the two blackout periods. Again, this is a visualization of what should be happening with Orion at the moment, although we are in a blackout period that should end about 3 minutes and 15 seconds from now. And we have data from Orion. Orion out of the blackout period. Flight Dynamics reports that Orion is right on the money, coming right down the pike. A good view out of the cabin camera looking out of the upper hatch of Orion. We should be performing the skip entry maneuver momentarily. Good communications established with Orion. This view on the deck of the USS Portland. And there is a view out of the cabin camera of Orion as it continues a series of role reversals. We have data back from the spacecraft. Flight Dynamics reports Orion straight and narrow on a true course toward its splashdown site. Forward bay covered jettisoning less than 3.5 minutes from now. (150,000 feet off the ocean). Orion now traveling at Mach 10. Orion now at 50,000 feet. Forward bay covered jettisoning pyros are armed. (25,000 feet). Drogues have been deployed. Two good drogue shoots reported by the recovery team out in the Pacific. The descent rate is right on the money. Orion's velocity now down to 282 miles an hour. Range to splashdown 1.5 miles. 10,000 feet now. And we're on mains. 5,000 feet. Reefing in progress. 3 good main chutes for Orion. We have 3 fully inflated main chutes. Time to splash down 90 seconds. Perfect descent rate reported. And there it is, high over the Pacific, America's new ticket to ride to the moon and beyond now in view. Orion under its chutes descending toward splashdown. Orion in the perfect orientation for splashdown, just seconds away. (1,000 feet). Good descent rate. (500 feet). Splashdown. From Tranquility Base to Taurus Littrow to the tranquil waters of the Pacific, the latest chapter of NASA's journey to the moon comes to a close. Orion, back on Earth. Orion is in great shape, stable 1, just in the orientation that had been expected.
Please raise your hand so we can make sure we get you the microphone as well. Please give us your name and your outlet to begin with, and then your question.
Mark Carreau, the Aviation Week. When do you expect this this version to be in space? And I presume on the space station, and what would you do at that stage in order to evaluate?
There we go. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Thanks, Mark. So first off, Axiom is building their suit to go to the moon. This is the lunar surface suit, and we hope to have it on the moon in 2025 with Artemis III.
Will you test it, though, on the space station?
I could take it, or do you guys want to?
Yeah, sure, I'll take that. So this suit that's designed for the Artemis 3 mission will not be tested on the space station prior to that mission. We will do an extensive set of ground testing and qualification program to make sure that the suit's bulletproof and safe to go on that mission. But no, we won't take it to the space station first.
Our next question, I believe, Fox has a question from the floor over at the camera as well. Any additional questions for Bob Cabana as well, we can take those at this time. Meredith, if you want to take the microphone over to our camera over here. We have a question about the sizing.
Oh, yes. The new designing for women in particular, can you talk about what went into that, the differences, and what that design will be like?
Sure, yeah, I can speak to that. So we've put a lot of effort into the sizing of this suit and paying attention to how we design different joints in the suit to accommodate anybody, first percentile female to 99th percentile male. There's kind of two parts to that. There's getting the size to where they can perform a range of motion for a given task. And then the second part is making sure that when they perform that range of motion, it's done in an easy way. It's not very hard where you're fighting the suit and that type of thing. So we have a variety of test subjects at Axiom that we put in the suit. Lots of people who have been in the suit for a long time, tested many different prototype spacesuits. We also put crew members in the suit to test this, and so we'll basically take a lot of different test subjects and crew members, put them in the suit, evaluate designs, and refine them to make sure that the suit performs well for any individual who's going to get inside the suit.
So basically, it's going to be this same suit, custom fit to each person, male or female. Is that correct?
That's close. So it's not quite custom fit. We have the capability to do that, but what this design does is essentially a kind of a macro and a micro sizing. So we have different sizes of elements that we can swap out, a medium, large, and small, if you will, for different components. But then within each of those sizes, we also have an adjustability to where we can really tailor the suit to someone's, the length of their leg or the length of their arm or things like that. So we have a lot of sizing capability to adjust the suit for their particular body.
And just a little bit more of what you were expressing during the public speaking about the flexibility. You were talking about how he's able to bend up, pick the samples up, and just the improvements from the older.
Sure. So I would say that both at Axiom and at NASA, there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done in the past to improve the mobility of the suit. A lot of that was done through various prototype suits years ago through the XEMU project, and we're doing the same thing at Axiom. And so we mentioned a partnership earlier. We're really working together to find the best architecture to give the astronauts the best mobility possible for the tasks that they need to perform. And so we look at those historical designs and learn from those in the previous testing that's been completing, in addition to trying new ideas out that our team has inside the lab, testing those inside our lab or inside different environments or different facilities, that NASA has or that we have. And so essentially what you do is you look at what's been done in the past, you learn from that, and you try some new ideas, and we just kind of iteratively improve the suit over and over and over again, making tweaks here or there as we learn new lessons.
Some instructions for our phone bridge friends as we move the microphone up the stairs for a question up at the top of the stairs. If you're on the phone bridge, please press *1 if you have a question, and after you are done with your questions, you can hit *2 to withdraw your hand. We have a question in the room. Sir, your name and your outlet, please.
Hi, Robert Perlman with Space.com and CollectSpace. Two questions, somewhat related. Can you give an example of what was brought over from the XEMU research and what is new from the Axiom contribution? And then just in general, in terms of donning and doffing the suit, can a single individual put it on themselves? Do they need assistance like right now with the EMU? And how is it put on? How many different parts are there?
Sure, yeah, great question. A couple examples of areas where we've kind of directly transferred technology from XEMU. The boots are one of those. The hard upper torso of the spacesuit, NASA put a tremendous amount of effort into designing that hard upper torso. And so we looked at that design. We've tweaked a couple minor details, but in large part, that was a direct transfer, helmet bubble. But the rest of it, soft goods and things like that, we've designed in-house at Axiom, our own patterning, our own designs, obviously in collaboration with NASA and talking with NASA, but those are internal components that are a little bit different. The gloves are different. We've changed how the gloves are made and the design of those, so that's an Axiom unique product. As to how you get in and out of the suit, there's a hatch on the rear of the hard upper torso, and that hatch essentially swings open just like a door. It has two hinges and it swings open. And so you would put your feet into the suit, kind of sit up on the suit, and put your feet in, put your arms in, and slide down into the suit. So a single person will be able to don the suit. We're currently actually putting some features in to enable that, so they can self-close the hatch and then self-index themselves inside the suit. You can think things like shoulder straps and that type of thing. So we're still working on a couple of those elements, but we've made some good progress toward them.
Just to follow up, given the use of the hatch, are you envisioning this being used with a suit lock of any sort with the vehicles that are being developed?
Sure. So the current work that we're doing does not involve a suit lock or a suit port or anything like that. Certainly a rear entry design would be what you need to make that type of idea come to fruition, but currently we're not working to that.
Another question down here in the front, and then we'll go to our phone line. If you do have a question on our phone bridge, please press *1 to indicate you have a question.
This is Mark Carreau again with Aviation Week and Space Technology. How long will an astronaut be able to function in this suit? And I'm interested in the sorts of advances that you've tried to make in mobility, dexterity, communication, and also situational awareness that the astronauts can obtain in this suit, the objectives.
So I heard a couple questions there. Can you repeat your first one? I'm trying to keep track of.
Well, let me skip.
I think it was how long? Did you say how long they can be?
Yeah, how long can they wear the suit on a mission, given, sort of estimated capability? And then, again, I'm talking about the advances you're striving for in terms of mobility, dexterity, communication, and also situational awareness.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So the first one is pretty simple. So we're designing the suit for 8 hours and a nominal 8-hour length. Certainly, in the right conditions, the suit can go longer than that. But it's a step, kind of a step up from the current day spacesuits. The current day suits were designed to 6.5 hours and a lower what we call metabolic rate, basically how hard you're working in the suit. So we designed to a higher metabolic rate and 8 hours in this suit. So it's honestly a pretty huge step up in performance in terms of EVA capability. Situational awareness is a good topic to talk. That's critical for astronauts, especially while they're EVA. This is a very dangerous operation, of course. So we've incorporated some features, and again, some of these are things that have transferred from XEMU. So if you look at the helmet bubble and the visor assembly, if you were to kind of do a side-by-side between that and the current suit, you'll notice that there's much more clear vision in this helmet bubble. The visor assembly has been kind of compacted back to the rear of the helmet bubble. That's something that XEMU worked towards, and that's something that we're kind of taking forward and refining. And what that does for you is gives you much more situational awareness, much more visibility, especially for low Earth orbit EVAs, where if you're translating and you're kind of looking up, your view isn't blocked by the visor itself, so you're having to move your head more or move the suit more. So it makes translation in a microgravity environment more intuitive.
Any additional questions in the room? Once again, we're going to go to the phone bridge, *1 to indicate that you have a question. At this time, we don't have any questions on the phone bridge, so I'm going to move on to Fox 26 in the front row.
This is just kind of a basic question for the purpose of my story for the audience. If anyone wants to speak about the partnership between NASA and commercial in general and the benefits of this in a situation such as what we're witnessing today.
Yeah, I can take that one. So again, we talked about earlier this morning that this is under a service contract. And so Axiom retains ownership of the hardware. And again, we are working in collaboration to develop the suit to make sure that it does meet the NASA requirements. But outside of that, we actually encourage Axiom and any ex-EVAS contract vendor to go out and look for other commercial customers that can use this suit. And what that does at the end of the day is reduce the cost to the government as we can cost share across other customers that they have.
And there's a question behind. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
And so I would just add that because Axiom is building a commercial space station, We also need an EVA capability. So, so it fits really well with our business model, and we're building suits for both NASA, for Artemis, and then for Axiom, for EVAs. Yes.
There's a question behind you.
Hi, David Phillip with the Associated Press. I just want to know what's different between the outer layer and the underneath layer. I mean, is it just color, and what kind of design differences?
Yeah, great question. So there's actually a lot of layers to the spacesuit. In general, you have an inner layer that's called we call it the bladder layer, and that's what holds the air inside the spacesuit. Okay, so you can think of it like a balloon almost. Outside of that is what's called a restraint layer, and that layer holds the shape of the balloon so that it holds the air pressure and kind of takes the load of all the inflating the suit. Then from there you have essentially an insulation layer that's actually made up of a bunch of different layers on top of that. So that's one of the differences that you won't see on this suit. This suit does have the same bladder layer and restraint layer, but the insulation layer is different. So this is what we would call a cover garment that we use to protect the inner layers of the suit during ground testing or training or things like that. For space flight, we need to protect the astronaut from the thermal environment of space, and so the insulation layer really helps protect against the sun rays and UV light and things like that. So there's a variety of materials that we use inside of that layer to do that job. And then for the Artemis III mission, we're also doing some proprietary things to that layer to help with dust, because dust is going to be a huge problem when we go back to the moon.
Excellent. We have 9 questions on the phone bridge, and we have one more in the room, so I'm going to go to the phone bridge. I'm going to start with Alicia Saws from Mashable. We're going to unmute your line, and you may ask your question at this time.
I'll take it. That's a great question. This is probably an area where I might say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, yeah, we're still using diapers in the spacesuit. They're just honestly a very effective solution. Sometimes simplicity is best, and this is one of those cases. So yes, today's suits currently use diapers, and we're envisioning the same for the future.
Okay. Moving on to the Houston Business Journal and Jishun. You may go ahead and ask your question.
I think the question was, how are we incorporating new technologies from previous research into this suit? That's at least what I heard. Okay, I'll speak to that a little bit, and if anybody else wants to jump in. Yeah, great question. So there's been a lot of research and development that's gone on, both in the private industry, but also especially inside the government as well, through the XEMU project and then projects that preceded it. So at least in terms for Axiom and how we kind of approach suit design, we look at all of that work that's been done, the technology development for different components of the suit, and then when we architect this solution, we look at what makes sense for the type of suit that we're building, given the requirement set that we have. So the requirement set we're working to is slightly different than XEMU, so we expect to see some changes. We also look at data from various payloads that have flown. So NASA's actually done a tremendous amount of work at flying payloads like the SURFI payload experiment that tested different technologies on the International Space Station. kind of more at a component level, still integrated. So we look at all of that data and we look at all those technologies and assess where they're at in terms of maturity, and then we decide what makes sense to put into our suit, given the requirements that we're working to, the schedule we have, and a variety of other factors.
Looks like we're having a little bit of an issue with the audio from the phone bridge making it to NASA TV, so if you give me a moment to restate the question on the microphone before you answer. Our next question is going to come from Jim Siegel of nasatech.net. And again, give me a moment to repeat the question once it's asked. Go ahead, Jim. Must be a rocky place full of sharp edges. Are there any advancements in tear-resistant technology that this suit has over the Apollo era?
Sure. Great question. So yes, you're correct. The lunar regolith, the rocks, things like that, they are very, very sharp. And so obviously when you're walking around in an inflatable suit, these are things you pay attention to. I talked a little bit before about the insulation layer of the suit. The very outer layer of that suit is comprised of a number of different fabrics, and many of those are specifically designed to prevent puncture, tear. They're tear resistant, prevent scuffing and things like that. And to make sure that the fabric selections that we choose and the way we design it on the suit is going to work, we do lots of testing in the house, sometimes at an integrated level where we take the suit and test the entire suit, but oftentimes we take samples of the fabrics and test those, and there's just a whole suite of different tests that we do to look at the durability of a given fabric and the materials in that fabric. That's one of the major ways you kind of work against the risk of getting a puncture or a tear or something like that from the lunar surface, or any other. The same thing applies on LEO as well, the low Earth orbit.
Great. Our next question comes from Chris Davenport. So the question is this the same suit for the EVAs? Why is there a covering on it? Is there proprietary information that you are keeping? Eventually, this suit will not have this covering, so why not just show it off now? And if you could, please give us your name and your title.
So this is Mark Greeley, the program manager for Axiom. So our architecture is the same for lunar and for LEO. There are some things that'll obviously be different. When you go to lunar, it'll have a protection garment on the outside. It won't have the cover layer that we're demonstrating today. The boots that we have today are very similar. The gloves are very similar. For ISS or our commercial space station, or if we have the opportunity to support NASA space station, we will likely have different boots and perhaps different gloves. The cover layer may be very similar, but the suit itself is very close. The base configuration is very close for lunar or LEO. And you are correct. I mean, we are in competition with Collins, so there are things that we haven't revealed below the suit, which is proprietary to Axiom.
We're going to our next question on the phone line. If you could, please tell us your name and your outlet before asking your question. is, how are you mitigating dust? Will you be packing extra when we go to the moon? And please acknowledge who you are.
Sure. So this is Russell Ralston, Deputy EVA Program Manager at Axiom Space. Excuse me. Great question. So yeah, dust is going to be a pretty tricky problem to deal with on the lunar surface. So we attack it in a couple of different ways, and I'll try to give you the best answer I can while still acknowledging we are in competition. So when we look at the way we design the suit, we look at a couple of different ways to tackle dust. One approach is to prevent dust from coming onto the suit. So looking at different treatments or things that we can do to the suit to prevent dust from adhering to the suit in the first place. That being said, we know it's going to adhere to certain areas, and so what we do then is we look at how can we keep that dust from then liberating off the suit once it comes back into the lander. Because as long as it stays on the suit, it's fine. It's not a hazard to health or things like that. But what we don't want to happen is for that dust to come off the suit and then get into the air and things like that. So that's definitely an integrated problem that will work with the lander providers. But as far as the suit goes, we have a couple different techniques that we'll go through in terms of cleaning the suit and then putting some devices on the suit to make sure that the dust doesn't come off and liberate into the atmosphere. And then to the question about, are we going to fly extra suits or things like that? One of the approaches we look at is intentionally making portions of the suit sacrificial. So you'll see this type of idea in racing where, on the helmet visor, they'll have tear-offs essentially. So as dirt and dust gets on the helmet visor, they can just tear off a new portion and see clearly again. So taking that same type of idea and applying it to the suit, I envision we'll have a few things like that. And so, of course, we'll work with our logistics teams and with NASA to come up with the right sparing strategy for those kinds of components and components that we expect, might not make it the full mission, if there are any, once we get through the full analysis.
Okay, our next question comes from John from Popular Science. John, are you there? Can we go to John? Well done, John. Okay, next up is Lucy from AFP. And after Lucy will be Alan from Al Jazeera English. Bit about the fabrics, please.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right, so yeah, this is Russell Ralston, EVA Deputy Program Manager at Axiom Space. So you're correct, the temperature environment on the lunar surface is a pretty extreme environment. It goes from several hundred degrees positive Fahrenheit to, in the shade, several hundred degrees negative in the Fahrenheit range. And so as you walk in between those environments on the surface, you're dealing with large temperature swings. And so we do have to select, I think your question's correct. We do have to primarily work against the temperature extremes with material selection. So which fabrics we use, which materials we use on the suit, and then how we build up the insulation layer to provide most of the resistance to the temperature change. Fortunately, most of that, hopefully this isn't too technical, most of that heat transfer is radiation, so our insulation is really targeted against radiative transfer, except for the boots. And so earlier I was talking about how it's really important on the boots that we design those in such a way, because your feet are kind of constantly in contact with the surface, or if you kneel down and your knees inside your suit touching the surface, there's some insulating materials that we're applying in different areas to help prevent the crew member's skin from becoming too cold or too hot or things like that. So it really does come down to material selection and the fabrics that we're using on our suit for the actual insulation layer help address that particular concern, both for the cold and for the hot.
Excellent. Our next question comes from Al Jazeera and Alan. Alan, are you there? So what is revolutionary about this suit, and what can we use from the suit design and product that could be used on Earth for healthcare workers or first responders or people in cold climates?
Yeah, great question. Again, Russell Rawls from EVA Deputy Program Manager at Axiom Space. So it'd almost be easier to tell you what's not revolutionary because so much has changed, especially if you were to do a side-by-side comparison to like the Apollo suits. Some of the changes are in the soft goods side. So if you look at the spacesuit itself, the joint designs are all brand new, and again, a lot of them were developed in-house at Axiom. Probably the easiest examples to give are some of the components in the life support system, though. There are components. One of them I'll call the spacesuit water membrane evaporator. That's just the title we give it. This device helps us provide cooling to both the avionics inside the suit and the crew member themselves. That component was in development for gosh, I don't know, almost maybe 2 decades, something like that. That component is remarkable new technology that we're using in our suit. And so that's what we mean by revolutionary. It's not taking in many cases, it's not taking a piece from, say, the current spacesuit and just kind of tweaking it and upgrading it. There's cases here or there of that, but in large part, the life support system is totally brand new. It leverages lessons learned from previous suits. So we obviously study what types of failures have happened in the past and what's worked well and what hasn't worked well. But almost everything inside the life support system is totally brand new.
And any uses for these revolutionary products that could be used here on Earth?
Great reminder, yes. So one of the things we do at Axiom as a commercial company is constantly look at where can we apply these same technologies to other industries or to help. You gave the example of healthcare workers or other things. So yes, we take each of those technologies, a lot of them in the life support system again, and we look at different industries of where those could help. And so I think in the coming months and years, you'll see more clear examples of that.
Our next question is going to come from the Discovery Channel, but first I'm going to go to a question here in the room. Go ahead. And can you tell us who you are and who you're with? There we go.
Okay, hi. Andrea Leinfelder of the Houston Chronicle. I just wanted to follow up a little more on the cover versus protection layer, just so when people see these photos, I can explain to them that exterior is not what's going to be on the moon. So can you tell me just like what this cover layer is and how a protection layer might be different, if that makes sense?
Sure, yeah. So the easiest example is this is what's on the suit for the ground testing and training, and it protects the bladder layer and the restraint layers of the suit and the joints and things like that. So it's like wearing a jacket. It's just another layer that goes on top that protects you in jacket case from being cold, and in this case from scuffs or bends or whatever else happens while we're testing the suit, bending down on the ground or something like that. So it's pretty simple. It's just a fabric layer that protects the inner layers of the suit. The insulation layer that we've developed is much more complex. So it has, I won't give the exact number, but it has a variety of layers to it with different materials sandwiched and kind of laminated inside of it, and that helps with the radiation heat transfer, essentially. So one of the materials that we put in there is called aluminized mylar. Sometimes you'll see this in people's like attics in their homes. You'll have this like metal-looking film that gets stapled up on the rafters, and that helps with heat insulation. So we use that in part of that insulation layer. So whereas this is kind of a single fabric just for basic protection purposes on the ground, the insulation layer is providing the flight insulation layer is providing cut resistance, puncture resistance, thermal insulation, and a variety of other features. So it's a much more complex part of the suit, and well, we kind of tailor that layer to different portions of the suit based on what, what's on the knee might be a little bit different than what's on the backpack, so to speak, things like that.
Our next question comes from the Discovery Channel, and I'm going to go to David on the phone, and then we'll have 2 more questions on the phone and 1 more here in the room. So we're going to David on the phone. It always takes a moment.
Okay. Mark Greeley, Axiom EVA Program Manager. So I did mention around 50/50 the pressure garment system. The entire soft suit is an Axiom design. The gloves are an Axiom design. And then there are some other components that are beneath the cover layer that are really proprietary to Axiom that we've changed based on trade studies. In many cases, as we've talked today, we use NASA's technologies, and if there are areas where the technology wasn't fully mature, we iterate on it and try to bring it to completion in terms of maturity so we can use it on the suit.
Okay, and our last question, I believe, from the room.
This is also going to be our last question for today. We're rounding out today's program. This is Robert Perlman with Space.com and Collect Space.
Thanks. Comparing this to what we know from Apollo, the Apollo suit was one piece in itself, but then it was augmented by pockets and mounting points for cameras and everything else. Realizing this is not the final version of the outer layer, but how much of that other augmentation do you anticipate for this suit? And is it Axiom's responsibility to provide the pockets and the attach points, or will NASA be augmenting the suit for its own needs?
Yeah, great question. So we'll provide, I'll answer the last part first. So we'll provide everything, the whole suit, EVA tools for the lunar surface, and everything that goes with it. So yeah, we do have the insulation layer design with different pockets, things that we call kind of multi-purpose attachment points that can be used for crew rescue if needed, or other things like that, carrying tools and things like, and other devices if they have a payload they need to take out or something like that. So you'll see a lot of features when we reveal that particular flight outer layer that is included in our part of the design of the suit. So we'll have 100% design influence on that, and obviously working with NASA and provide that to them.
And one quick follow-up, if I can. Similarly, with the visor, do you anticipate, are we going to see another gold visor like we did on Apollo, or are you, because we're going to the South Pole, is clarity more of a priority?
Yeah, good question. We'll still have a visor that provides UV protection to the eyes. There's still portions of sunlight on the South Pole, so anytime you're in that, we'll probably have that down. In addition to hard visors, just like in your car, right? So if the sun's just bothering your eyes, you can put those visors down and block that temporarily if you want to.
If there are additional questions, you can always reach out to Axiom Space at media@axiomspace.com. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wonderful questions, and thank you to the entire team, and congratulations. Thanks so much.